I will kick off and say good morning to everyone. My name is Jim James. I'm an International Trade Advisor with the Department for International Trade, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this session, Seeking Business Opportunities in Southeast Asia. If we can move on the slide, please, Veronica. Move one slide on. Actually, yes, that's me. So perhaps move on to the next one. We've got a couple of quick housekeeping points. Any technical issues, contact the event organizer, Joanna. The slides will be forwarded on to you. If you've got any comments, please use the chat box, which should be on the right-hand side. And if we move on to the next slide, please, we've got the small print, just the usual things. The session will be recorded. Just give you a moment to have a look through that. And if we can just move on to the next slide, please, Veronica. I will just, next slide, please. Not quite that one. Whilst we're waiting for the slides to come back, I can tell you that the slide I was going to be talking through is just a brief introduction to the International Trade Advisor network, the Trade Advisors, the team which I work for. The International Trade Advisors for the Department for International Trade are your first port of call. Our job is very simply just to help you do more business internationally. I'm one of about 60 international trade advisors covering London and the South East, and we have over 300 across the UK, across 9 regions of England and the devolved regions of Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland. All of the international trade advisors have real experience of doing business around the world. And just for example, I spent many years living and working in the ASEAN region when I worked for Haymarket Media Group, so I've been there and seen it, so to speak. Our role in previous years takes many different forms, the way that we help companies in terms of things like trade missions and events. Obviously, the way the world is at the moment, we're having to do things slightly differently, slightly more online and remotely like this, but we remain your first port of call. Whenever you want to try and do some business, please speak to us first, and then we will help develop an export action plan with you. But without any more ado, I'd like to hand over to Ian Gibbons, who should be up next. And Ian is the CEO of the UK-ASEAN Business Council. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you very much for that introduction, and good morning to everyone who has joined us. Delighted to be sharing today's event. So you heard from Jim about his role, his team's role, and the valuable role that international trade advisors fulfill. The role of the UK-ASEAN Business Council is to be a bridge, is to be a connector, is to act in partnership with the valuable work that Jim and the team do in the UK, and importantly also to act as that link and bridge at the overseas end. And as far as we're concerned today, it's all about Southeast Asia. So our connections there are with the Department for International Trade country teams throughout the region. And the important thing is to ensure that you are connected at the UK end, sometimes through UK-ABC, sometimes directly with the trade teams, and sometimes with the Chambers of Commerce. So all of this, I hope, will be explained further. We have a wonderful day ahead of us. Lots of experts, and it's always dangerous when you bill yourself as an expert, but that's me calling them experts, which I know that they are. So I think, to be honest, what I'd like to do right now, I'd like to hand over to Emily Hamlin, who I know very well. She is Consul General in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. She is the Director of DIT Vietnam, and she also has the pleasure of being the Deputy Director for ASEAN. So it's a wide range of job. And without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Emily, who's going to talk to you about opportunities in the region. Emily, to you, please.
Thank you very much, Ian, for that introduction, and a big thank you to you and UK-ABC and to Jim and Newables for hosting this event and for inviting me along to say a few words to kick things off. I'm really delighted to be here today to talk about seeking business opportunities in Southeast Asia. And really, I just wanted to cover 3 brief points in this introductory session. Firstly, to underline the opportunities for business that we see in Southeast Asia, and secondly, to set out the UK's existing presence and links and established relationships in that region that are there to be built on, and thirdly, just to talk a little bit about what we are doing as the UK government overseas in the region to really make sure that we are doing what we can to support UK businesses to harness those opportunities that we see in the region. So firstly, there is definitely a region of immense opportunity for UK businesses. It's a fast-growing, vibrant, dynamic region of the world. And I won't say too much about this because I'm assuming by the fact that you have chosen to dial into this webinar that you are aware to some extent of the opportunities that the region represents. But just to give a few key stats to illustrate this, firstly, in terms of demographics, it's a region of nearly 650 million people already, and the population is growing very fast, and over 40% of that population are currently under 25 years of age. So I think that illustrates that there is a rapidly growing potential consumer base in the region and rapidly growing demand. And the region already has a GDP of over $2 trillion US, and it's experienced across the region high and stable growth rates over the last few years, the last many years, in fact, averaging growth rates of around 5%.
So I think we've just lost Emily at the moment, so hopefully she will be able to rejoin us. But for now, I mean, I would just like to endorse everything Emily said there about the opportunities, the scope, and the general excitement about doing business in ASEAN. Is a market that's open for business, it's hungry for business, and particularly that business to come from the United Kingdom. But we'll move on for now and hope that Emily can rejoin us. So what I would like to do is move on to Rizalu Akbar, who's the commercial attaché at the Indonesian embassy in London. So importantly, what we try to do today is get a good mix of individuals who are active both at the UK and also the ASEAN end. And Rizalu is based here in London at the Indonesian embassy. Recently arrived from Indonesia. His prior experience spans Africa, the Middle East, Canada, and the Netherlands. So that shows what a wealth of experience he has. And it would be great now to hear from Rizalu to talk about a bit about the UK, breaking out from his work on the UK-Indonesia trade review. But what he can do is give us an overview of the important part of his country plays in the ASEAN region. So Rizalu, can I ask to you, please?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ian Gibbons. Can you hear me clearly, or?
I can hear you fine, Rizalu, yes.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for UK-ABC for having me and for inviting me for this to this great event, and also to Jim, also, and all to the members of the UK-ABC and all the participants. So I would like to probably introduce myself first. So my name is Muhammad Rizalu Akbar, and you can call me Rizalu, and I'm just currently posted as the trade attaché in the Indonesian embassy in London. So what I'm going to have here is I would like to highlight the opportunities and the challenges for the UK companies who wants to do the business with the ASEAN countries. So next, please. So when we have to see the profile, just like Emily have mentioned that ASEAN is the third largest economy in Asia. So and also the 6th largest economy in the world, and it's projected to that in 2030 it's going to be the 4th largest economy in the world. So we have the approximate 650 million population, so it's so big, and also the total GDP of 2.8 trillion US dollar in 2019. And also with the average economic growth of the 5% per annum, and I know that excuse me, and I know that it's because of during the pandemic, it's going to be, you know, it's going to be decline for the growth. But I think that in the next few years, it's like 2021, 2022, it's going to be bounce back to the positive economic growth. And also we have the young populations, and then so the young population is the strong driver for the economic of the ASEAN member countries, because of their high, I mean, their, you know, they have some kind of desire to consume more of products, and that's probably one of the important thing that's the attraction for the other countries to get into the ASEAN market. Next, please. So this is only the indicator. I put this the ease of doing business and also the global competitiveness index, which all the members of the ASEAN is actually improving. So if you want to doing business with Indonesia, I mean it's now it's more easier for foreigners to do the business with ASEAN members countries. Next. Excuse me. Next slide, please. And this is the logistic performance index. So in terms of logistic, I mean, the ASEAN members also there's improvement in every sectors, like customs, infrastructures, and also the internal shipments and logistics. So when you it is this one is one of the important indicator for foreigners, especially for the UK companies who wants to do the business with ASEAN people. It's like to Indonesia or to Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia. So the customs index is improving. So you know the customs. So the process of the imports is less hassle. So it's more. I mean, it's more easier for importers to do the process of the importation in the customs, and also the infrastructure is also very improving a lot, especially in my country, in Indonesia, because we have the focus from my president to focus on solely to the infrastructures. It will help products coming to Indonesia, then will be distributed very quickly in some parts of Indonesia. That's one only one of these example in Indonesia, and also the internal shipments and as well as the logistics. So for the logistic performance, I think it's really encouraging for UK's businesses who wants to do the business with people in ASEAN, because we are improving in terms of logistics. Next, please. And this is excuse me. This is only the data, the ASEAN trading partner. Sorry. So the main, I mean, ASEAN mainly trading with its internal partners. So we have like 20% of our trade is between ASEAN members, and then the second one is 16% is with China, which is a huge market also for China, for China's product going into ASEAN, and the third ranking is EU, which is UK is included in the EU, but still UK is the share UK's contributions to the trading with ASEAN is still small. It's relatively small. So I think there is still some space, some room for improvement to the UK businesses to trade with member countries of ASEAN. And in terms of the FTA also, I mean, you can see in the slide that EU, I mean, is the number one investors in ASEAN. So I think with the with the improving of our business climate, it will attract more for UK investors to invest in ASEAN. Next, please. So this is the ASEAN trade with the UK. So in 2019, UK export to ASEAN is only 16.1 billion. And UK import from ASEAN is 18.8 billion US dollar. And the total trade is more or less 35 billion US dollar in 2019. And the main export products from UK to ASEAN is turbojets, ethyl alcohol, and then parts of aircrafts, piston engines, medicaments. Medicaments is like medicine and also the medical equipment, automotives, electronic parts, cosmetics, various waste, and telephone set. So that's the 10 big main products coming into ASEAN market from the UK. And I think there's the other slide will explain what is the opportunity for the other product to come into ASEAN market. And the main export destination for UK's products is Singapore, which is actually it's in terms of market is small, but I mean the high consumptions of the population of Singapore is quite also is quite huge, and also Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, and Vietnam. And for the UK import from ASEAN, usually ASEAN member export the telephone set, turbojets, preserved meats, aircraft parts, and gold. So that's the main import products from ASEAN to UK, which the source is coming from the Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia as well. So those products are actually the main exports product and import products from UK to ASEAN and vice versa to UK from ASEAN. Next slide, please. Next one. Yeah, I think if you can see the image, so there is the opportunity for the UK's product to enter the ASEAN market, such as for the airplane parts and helicopter parts. So you only have 25% now. The share for UK. So you still have 75% opportunity to get in the market of ASEAN. And you can also see the medicaments. So there's still some kind of opportunity that is not tapped yet by the UK's exporters to coming into the ASEAN market. So I think if you see the image, I mean, it's absolutely, there's a lot of opportunities for UK's exporters to do the business with the ASEAN members countries, beauty, makeup, and then perfume, as well as the jewelry, food, and everything. So there's still room of to improve the export actually from the UK to the ASEAN countries. And the last one will be the challenges and the opportunities. The opportunities is actually, yeah, ASEAN is huge market with more than 600 million populations, and most of them are growing young population with the education, with good education, and also digital savvy. Most of them, the young people in ASEAN, and then also the consumer behavior. You can see that the private consumption in ASEAN is quite high. It's more than 60% share of the GDP for the private consumption. So and also, you know, when we see, especially in Indonesia, when you see products which made in, it's like from somewhere outside Indonesia, yeah, for example, made in UK, it's gonna be, you know, it's gonna be sold in like in seconds, because you know the consumer in yeah, I would say especially in Indonesia, they really, I mean, they really into products coming from abroad, especially from developed countries just like UK's. And also we have ASEAN Plus and RCEP. As you have been aware that RCEP is, I think is the biggest what do you call, the biggest economy, which includes ASEAN members plus Japan, China, Australia, New Zealand, with more than 2.2 billion populations. So it's really huge market, because we just signed the RCEP agreement in last week on 15th of November. So it's like it will give you opportunity not only to enter the ASEAN market, but also I mean the product will be you know, it could be distributed to the other countries other than ASEAN. So it's like a hub for your products, ASEAN, and then to the other RCEP members country. And then what is the challenges actually? So the challenges would be the tariff. I know that the MFN tariff for the ASEAN members is roughly average of the MFN tariff is under 10%. It's more or less 8 to 9%. But still, if we have the let's say UK-ASEAN free trade agreement, there will be you know, that will be very helpful for both you know, entities to reduce the tariff, because if we reduce the tariff, that will be more competitive for your products to enter the ASEAN markets. And the second one will be the non-tariff barriers, especially for the standards, labeling, SPS. And one of the most important thing is for usually, I mean, especially for the food products, is halal requirement. So because I mean, for Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei is you know, the population, the majority of population is Muslim. So probably if you, I mean, if your product is food, I think it is important for you to like to consider, I mean, the halal certifications, which is
Rizalo, sorry to jump in.
Yes,
I have to bring you to a close, unfortunately, because we do need to bring Emily back in as she was cut off. I mean, it's quite important that we are able to stick to the agenda. So if we could
okay, so okay, so the last point will be business culture, Ian. So I think the UK's businessmen should consider the business culture in ASEAN, because it's completely different with the UK's business culture, and sometimes you have to like to consider how to get into the businesses in ASEAN members, especially in Indonesia, Malaysia, and also in Thailand and Vietnam as well. Probably that's from me, Ian. Thank you for having me. And then if you, I mean, if there's any particular question, and then you can raise, and then I will try to respond it later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rizali, for that very thorough overview of the ASEAN opportunity, both the opportunities and the challenges. Now, before I bring David Kelly in, who's Executive Director of BRICS in Singapore, I do want to go back and bring Emily Hamblin back in. She was cruelly cut short by a technology failure there. But Emily, if you're with us now, can I bring you back in for you to finish your remarks? That would be very helpful. So Emily, back to you, please.
Hello, can you hear and see me now?
Yes, can hear you and see you, Emily.
Okay, great. I'm very sorry about what happened last time. I don't know why that was, that I suddenly dropped out. But I believe you heard me up to the end of my first point, which was around the level of opportunities here in Southeast Asia. So moving on to my second point, which was just to underline that the UK already has strong relationships with the region. So from a diplomatic point of view, for example, we have embassies and high commissions in all of the 10 ASEAN member states. And I think Rizalou just did a really good job of explaining the existing trade and investment flows that exist between the UK and the region, so I won't go over that again, but just to emphasise the trajectory of growth around trade in particular, which has grown by 70% over the last 10 years and by 10% in 2019 alone. So I think there's a really strong trajectory there that we're keen to continue to build on. And also to emphasise that we also have broader soft power and a strong UK brand in the region, which again, I think Rizalou touched on in terms of how products and services from the UK are received, and strong people-to-people links that are an important background context for doing business with the region. So for example, there are over 120,000 British nationals already resident in the region. And in normal times, outside of the current COVID situation, 2.3 million tourists visiting the region each year. And to move on to my third point was just to explain a bit about what the UK government is doing in order to ensure that we are positioning business and supporting business as much as possible to harness the opportunities in the region. So firstly, from a diplomatic point of view, we have created an ambassador to ASEAN within the last year, and also made an application to become an official dialogue partner to ASEAN as the UK in our own right, independently, and backed that up, for example, hosting the first ever UK-ASEAN Economic and Trade Ministerial meeting in the last couple of months, as well as having a really strong UK presence at the ASEAN Business Investment Summit that took place last week. And then from a more trade-specific point of view, from a trade policy perspective, we're working hard to negotiate several different free trade agreements to position the UK really at the centre of a network of progressive free trade agreements with the dynamic economies in this part of the world. So in particular, ensuring that we have bilateral free trade agreements in place with Vietnam and Singapore by the end of this calendar year to transition the EU free trade agreements that already exist with those countries, and also making clear our ambition to join CPTPP in the longer term. And then beyond that, we're working closely with businesses and with governments in particular priority sectors, especially where we see really high potential, to make sure that we understand the market access barriers, the challenges that businesses face, and can liaise directly with governments in country to try and get those removed or alleviated as quickly as possible to make it easier for you to do business, and to connect businesses with key contacts in supply chains and customers and business opportunities. To mention a couple of sectors that we're very focused on, we see a lot of opportunity in digital and tech, and there we've taken concrete actions like creating a new digital trade network in the region, and particular opportunities in areas like renewable energy and sustainable infrastructure, where again we're putting government funding into programs that support the low carbon transition, and that thereby help to also create opportunities for our businesses. I will stop there. I really hope I haven't dropped out again and you've heard me this time, but just to say, I think the programme for the event today looks excellent. You've got some great speakers, and please do reach out to UK government contacts, starting with the international trade advisors, for more information and bespoke support, and wish you every success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily, and it was great that we were able to re-engage with you there. So we were able to get those across. So thank you to Rizalu and Emily for giving us a very thorough overview from a broader policy perspective about the opportunities in ASEAN, which I think you agree are full and varied. So I'd like to move the conversation on now as to how you actually access those opportunities. And an old colleague of mine, David Kelly, who is the Executive Director of BRICS in Singapore, will now talk to us about how you actually move from that policy perspective to how you actually seize the opportunities in markets, and just how he and his fellow executive directors from BRICS across the region can help you actually do that business. David's been in Singapore for about 5 years now, originally in the maritime industry, moving in 2019 to become Executive Director at British Chamber in Singapore. Without further ado, David, over to you.
Thank you very, very much indeed, Ian. Thank you to the team at the UK-ASEAN Business Council and to Newable, and all of you on the call as well. It's great to be able to present to you today. As mentioned, my name is David Kelly. I'm the Executive Director of the British Chamber of Commerce here in Singapore, and I'm going to wear 2 hats for you in a very quick 10 minutes, because I appreciate that we're being pushed for time as well. So the first is, what do we do and how can we help? So what do the mechanics look like, and what is the network all about, and how can we support you? And the second is a bit about my journey. I'm going to weave that in there as well, because I used the Chamber in my previous job to help set up a company in Singapore to expand across the Asia Pacific region as well. So I'll try and weave both of those narratives in, just to say that there is a great network there for you across the region. Next slide, please, Veronica. So, as mentioned, why Southeast Asia? Well, the stats have already been said. The 650 million people, the RCEP agreement as well that was signed over the weekend, which sort of is looking at sort of 30% of the global economy and 30% of the global population as well, is absolutely significant. But what does that mean for you guys? And what it does mean is that there are chambers in 10 countries in ASEAN who are plugged into the local market, that provide that big support network that can help plug you into their membership, to their business ecosystems. They've got bodies on the ground, they know their markets very well, and collectively we meet every 2 weeks as a chamber network to help support companies. So where we have companies that come through to us from the international trade advisors in the UK, we would then help to try and navigate and signpost to other chambers where there might be interest to grow as well. So we work very, very collectively, very supportively of the UK businesses, and of course in parallel with the Department of International Trade and the UK-ASEAN Business Council. Next slide, please. So how does that actually work? Well, we tend to get companies that come through to us to look at market entry into the region. We try and help and establish and provide some support. We can provide a membership opportunity as well there, but there is a series of trade services activities that we can do to help signpost, help provide access to funds and capital in the region, but also looking for potential customers to buy your products and your services, and to build partnerships as well. And through that program, we try and help to nurture and grow and hopefully expand your business and support your export opportunities as well. And as I mentioned, we work collaboratively with our other chambers in the region as well, supporting those activities. Next slide, please. So this is just a bit of a summary of some of the services that we deliver. So we break it down into sort of 3 main areas around advisory services, around business matching, and around targeted events, and providing a bit more targeted support. And this is where I'm going to weave in my journey, because when we were looking at setting up an office in Singapore, and my previous company in Marine had ambitions to expand over the Asia Pacific region, we used the chamber network. So our first port of call was, can the chamber help to plug us into the market? What we were previously doing, like I'm sure a lot of businesses are doing, are flying over suits, collecting a load of business cards at key times throughout the year, building some connections. But the impactfulness of that, maintaining and building those relationships was lost somewhat. So we used the chamber network that had those relationships in place to be able to quickly signpost and almost shortcut some of those sort of challenges in terms of meeting people and finding good partnerships and good organizations as well. And that's what we did. And we set up the company and set up the office and expanded across the region, again using the chamber network in various other areas as well, which was really powerful. So that's the kind of support that we can provide. That's the kind of support that we'd like to provide to help companies, whether that's trying to find out the best market for you, trying to find the best partners, whether it's some market research, whether it's running very specific targeted events to try and put you in front of your target customer base, whether it's putting on some learning and some sharing through the platforms that we've got. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the chamber in Singapore. We're slightly higher than that. We're about 400 members, about 4,000 individual members as well. And really our purpose, like all of the chambers around the region, are to build those connections, to create those opportunities and to create those networking platforms to be able to connect the business ecosystem together and help to plug you into that. Next slide, please. And in terms of Singapore, it is quite a small place. It's about the size of Anglesey, but as was mentioned by Rosalu earlier, it is the second easiest place in the world to do business, and we do tend to see a lot of companies setting up their regional hubs in Singapore for that reason, in terms of the well-educated workforce, in terms of the ease of doing business, in terms of the low tax breaks, etc., and the access, the natural geographic placement of Singapore as well, to get access to the rest of the Asia Pacific region, and the transport links here are very, very important as well. So we're very privileged where we are as a chamber and where we are to support companies to navigate and signpost to other areas of the ASEAN region. Next slide, please. Just to give you an example of how we do plug you in, these are some of the main sectors that Singapore covers. And whilst it's only a small market of 5.6 million people, there are lots of really interesting programs happening. And the Singapore government's very good at navigating and telling people where they want to go. And there are 23 industry transformational roadmaps that are actually telling businesses where they want to get to and how they want to get to them across a number of industries. And I think just highlighting here, the ones that are highlighted in red are where we've got business committees, and all of the chambers have business committees in the region. So there's already an established ecosystem to plug you into. So whether you are, doesn't matter how sort of diverse and products and services and solutions that you may have, we try and use that support mechanism of our business committees, who are absolutely plugged into the heart of those industries to provide that soft landing for you when you come into region. Next slide, please. So how do you access all of this? Well, on our website, we do have a trade portal, which I've highlighted. I think you can just go to the next slide, please, Veronica, very quickly. As Ian's mentioned, and as Emily's mentioned, do go through the right channels and the right routes. I think the ITAs and through Newable are the right approaches, first of all, for them to be able to signpost you through to us. But we have set up a platform online which allows companies to, we can just check their export readiness, just check whether they're whether Singapore is the right market for them, or whether there's another market for businesses as well, just to help provide that support mechanism and not waste anybody's time as well. So just ensure that the products, the services, the companies that are coming in are right for the market, and if they're not, we try and help to navigate you to somewhere else as well. Next slide, please. And in the old world, we used to run trade missions, and this is a great picture or set of pictures of where we've had some great British F&B brands where we profiled them. And this was last year, pre-COVID. It's been a terrible year, as you can imagine. That has hampered businesses. But, and if we just move on to the next slide, please, Veronica. We have started to run virtual trade missions and run a series of programs that have been very sector specific, and we will continue to run those. And we'll work in collaboration with UK-ASEAN and Newable, etc., to help provide those content pieces for you. And I'm very happy for these slides to be made available to everybody as well. Next slide, please. So in summary, we've helped around about 1,000 businesses over the last 3 years, whether that's been general signposting, as I've mentioned, whether it's been market research, whether that's been product launches, whether that's been helping to connect with other areas of ASEAN, whether it's been setting up sort of key partnerships, whether it's been looking at funding and capital and investment to support growth strategies. And I guess the salient takeaway here is there is a network, a brilliant network that you can plug into that can really provide some on the ground, good, honest, supportive advice. And there's a great partnership network. And I think that overall collaborative ecosystem of the likes of Newable, UK-ABC, the International Trade Advisors and DIT at Post and Region, and the Chamber network is really powerful. So please do call on us through the correct channels. We're here to help, and we look forward to seeing many of you come through to the region when you're ready. So with that, I was conscious of time. I realised that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but Ian, back to you, and very happy to field any questions offline if they're coming through too.
Thank you so much. That was a great overview about how you, and particularly the Singapore Chamber, but how chambers in general can work in partnership to make it a reality for British businesses trying to do business in the ASEAN region. What I'd like to do now, so we've heard the policy, we've heard some perhaps some advice from David in terms of the chamber role. I'd like to bring a panel together now, who you can now see that slide. You have three practitioners there that are actually doing business in the region. So I think it's always it's great to hear from people like us, who actually can tell you how to get to market, but it's even more important, I believe, to actually hear from people who are doing business in the region. And my fourth panelist will actually, who is in market, but he straddles the Department for International Trade side, the important links with the chambers, and then also how to link with business themselves. But without further ado, what I'd like to do, first of all, is bring Charlie Mayer into the conversation, please. Charlie is Senior Vice President, Global Sales at Signal AI, and he is going to talk to us from a tech perspective. So that would be excellent to hear from Charlie. Charlie, in approximately 3 minutes, over to you, and then we will broaden it for discussion. The chat channel is now live, so it would be fantastic to hear from the audience in terms of things that you've heard so far, but also from what the panel will now share with us. So keep those questions coming in using the chat channel live. Charlie, over to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you very much indeed. And how exciting it is to be part of this event today. And I think the excitement really stems beyond the starting point for Signal AI in Asia. Signal itself, 7 years old. We're established in London. There are 160 of us today. And I look at the company in, I suppose, 3 ways. We are well established in Europe. We've been trading now for 5 years. I was responsible for establishing a merged entity. I then moved that over to the States, where I was the first feet on the ground and started growing the commercial entity there. But the excitement came when I was tasked with globalizing that and bringing it into Asia. Look, we've heard from Razula and Emily and about the 6th largest economy in the world, and from David recently that Singapore is the hub of either HQ or regional offices. And for us as a business, we augment or transform decision making through augmented intelligence, meaning we are a media intelligence business that have access to the globe's media. We bring that in, we use AI, and not having a hub in Asia, or more specifically ASEAN, was limiting our ability to service multinational organizations. So 2 years ago, I set out as first feet on the ground. And whenever you arrive in a new market as first feet on the ground, with a bootstrapped company, it is important to firstly leverage any relationship. LinkedIn is key, and any relationship you've got anywhere else. But secondly, it's about partnerships. And joining the BCC in Singapore and in Hong Kong was vital to the success of getting our first customers on the ground. We're 18 months established. We have an office in Hong Kong. Had it not been for the horrors of this year, we would have had another office in Singapore, and that is our ambitions as we go into FY21. So that's really the intro to Signal. It really is helping us service major multinational organizations globally by having a presence in Asia. What an exciting market to be operating in.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Charlie. Full marks for everything you said there, but also important that you stuck very clearly to time. So but don't rush away. So hopefully the questions will come your way. I'm hoping now to bring in on the FMCG side, Phil Walker, who's the export manager at Christie International. Are we able to bring Phil on? We may be having a technical issue there with bringing Phil on. So whilst we're working on that, I'm going to move on to our third panelist, and this is in the fashion area, Alex Falter, who's General Manager of Echo. You'll know Echo Shoes. Alex has tremendous experience in setting up 2 operations in Vietnam. So it's very much proof that success can happen through hard work, but some real practical examples from you. If I can ask you, Alex, to join us right now, please.
Sure. So what an exciting place it's been to be in Vietnam, really. I mean, we basically have sealed borders for the last 7 months, and it's quite incredible what kind of jump we are now able to make compared to some of the other markets. So I work for Echo. We run our own factories. We're very different to a normal shoe company, which outsources to South Korean or Taiwanese or Chinese companies. We own our own, and basically we decided to come into the Vietnamese market about 5 years ago. And I've been in Vietnam for 13 years, and I was able to set up Echo up to almost 1,400 people in about 3 years. So it just shows how quickly things can move in Vietnam if you really want to go fast. The main thing I think I'll be sharing during this panel discussion is just how Vietnam has been able to keep functioning throughout the pandemic. We also have sites in other countries in Southeast Asia, and they have quite a few difficulties, I would say, due to the pandemic. Keeping production going, etc. So I'll be here cheering for Vietnam, as well as my day job. I'm also heavily involved with BritCham Vietnam, and I serve as vice chair here in the south in Ho Chi Minh City.
Thank you so much, Alex. You can see that Charlie inspired you there to stick to 3 minutes bang on. So thank you, and again, look forward to talking to you further. Sort of drilling down on some of those decisions, executive decisions you took in how you've actually built that business, because I think that will be of tremendous interest to our audience. Phil Walker, I'm going to turn to you now, if I can. Thank you so much for joining us. So on the FMCG side, it would be great to hear from you, Phil, in terms of your very diverse customer product range and how you actually get them to market. So, Phil, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'll try and stick to the 3 minutes as well. Apologies, I needed to put another washer in the meter. Thank you for that introduction. We have, yes, you're right, we do have a wide client base stretched across food and beverage and non-food personal care items, domestic cleaning products, lots of anti-bac products in there, and we follow 2 routes to market, particularly direct to retail or through the traditional importer distributor route, and we as a business sit between the brand owner and the marketplace and manage the export procedure all the way from factory gate to retailer shelf. And the experience within Southeast Asia has been, someone I think just said, an exciting one, if not a challenging one as well. But that's why we're all in export, isn't it, to a certain degree? And to pick up on what's been said as well previously, that we have managed to plug into a lot of services offered both here in the UK through DIT and UK-ABC. And the respective chambers in the markets within the region, and it's acted as a very good springboard for us to develop the business over the last 4 or 5 years that I've been responsible for developing sales in the region.
Very, very good. I think there's a competition going to teach.
So, a bit of a nutshell, but hopefully people are familiar with what we've done. Sorry, was there a question there, Ian? Sorry.
Yeah, I was praising you, Phil, for your concise remarks there. Oh. We just lost you. Had you actually just finished there, just so I can be clear?
Yes, sorry, yes.
Very good. I was awarding you top marks there. Very good. Thank you. I'll bring you back in a little bit later. Last but not least, a very good friend of mine, Richard Porter, who's the DIT country director for Thailand, will give us a slightly different perspective in terms of, you know, how he works with the chambers, how he works with the SME business community, and how he fits into this whole scheme, which ultimately is all about driving British businesses to market, and in his case, driving them to Thailand. Richard, over to you.
Thanks, Ian. Let me just give you some brief comments, first of all, if I can, and welcome everyone to Bangkok in Thailand. I know that the days are beginning to draw in back in the UK, so there's some late sunshine that you might be able to see behind me in the background. So, Ian, I think I have one of the best jobs in the world. All of my colleagues, country directors across the world, have one objective, really, which is to help British businesses export their goods and services to Thailand. Now, I have to say, I don't see my role as being selling Thailand to companies back in the UK. That's for the Thai government to do. My job is to give you objective advice about what the opportunities are, where you can market your products, how you do that, whether it's a good or a service, and put you in contact with agents, put you in contact with distributors, and really help you to understand the legal landscape. And one thing that I do very regularly when companies approach me is tell them to look at other countries. So, for example, if we have a company coming to us saying that they are really interested in setting up manufacturing in Thailand, we're very happy to give them details. But my first piece of advice is look at Vietnam. You know, labor costs are much lower. It's easier to do business there. So I like to think that we're not too parochial in the advice that we give to companies. There is a whole host of information out there to support you in your exporting journey. Your first port of call, I would suggest, should be UK-ASEAN Business Council, who do have an overview of the whole region. Your international trade advisors, there'll be a team based very close to your business. They'll be happy to visit you. They'll be happy to come out and give you advice about how to develop a business plan, about which markets to focus on. And there's also lots of good information on the UK government website, great.gov.uk. Some really good information there about business planning, about marketing, about how you choose your markets, and just some warnings about some of the things that can sometimes go wrong with companies once they start exporting. But I think the reality is that most of the feedback that we get from SMEs is that exporting is much easier than they thought it would be. And all of the support, the professional support that we can give, that UK-ABC can give, that the chambers of commerce in country can give as well, who we work very closely in partnership with, really helps to kind of smooth their exporting journey and give them more confidence that their investment that they need to make to be able to export will be well protected. That's it from me, and I think we're going to have some more discussion later on the panel session, but back to you.
Thank you so much, Richard. So equal star marks for all of you for your concise delivery there, and that allows us to hopefully pick up on questions from our audience. So the audience has been a little shy at the moment, but I'm not being inundated with questions from the floor, but I have a couple, so I'll just kick off and then hopefully we'll get some questions landing. Richard, I'm going to stay with you for now. I was interested in your points there about the fact that SMEs found it a lot easier than they thought they might in terms of what can seem a daunting task in terms of exporting. Would you actually say that those people have said that it's easier than they thought because they'd followed a process, that process of going through, say, Newable at the UK end, working through whether it's UK-ABC, through other international trade advisors? Has it been easy because they followed a process rather than trying to skip steps?
Yes, I think so. So let me start off with this piece of advice. There is a huge amount of information already out there on the internet. And we as DIT provide some professional advice as well. But there's actually a huge amount that you can do yourself. Of course, we can refer you to people who can help you with export plans and business plans. But it's really worth setting aside, a couple of hours just to look at what's already out there. Because I think you'll be surprised at the kind of the depth of information that can help you to develop your exporting. A couple of things to consider. When choosing country, as I say, do take advice from the UK-ASEAN Business Council and other colleagues. But before that, you might want to look into some issues such as, what are the tariffs on the products that you're wanting to export. Ian, I saw from the guest list today that there are a number of companies attending this session who export spirits overseas. But actually, once you start looking at the tariffs, they are huge in this part of the world. Let me just give you a very quick overview. Thailand tariff on spirits, 300%, Laos, 70%, Myanmar, 200%, and it gets much worse. Brunei, 1,475%, Indonesia, 1,415%, and the winner is Vietnam at 45%. It can have a much more modest tariff. So just look at what the tariffs are likely to be on your products before you choose a market. Also look at things such as the availability of workforce in the country where you're wanting to work. What kind of skills do they have? Is unemployment high or low? What are the opportunities for people to move into your area to support you? Local partners in nearly all of the markets is going to be really important in helping you to understand the legal system, but also how the country really operates. Just take into account the timescales as well. If you need to get licenses, if you need to recruit people, in this current world, if you need to go in quarantine as well, just think about the timescales that it will take to set up your project or begin your exports. And then the most important thing, I think, in this part of the world, you can understand from your partners in country what's happening. But what I say to customers and our clients is there's always a subtext to that. You need to find out what's really happening. You will be familiar with the concept of saving face. Potential clients will very rarely say no directly to you because they don't want to humiliate you, essentially. But there's always a subtext that goes behind conversations. And we're kind of expert in advising how to interpret that. We often phone up clients after our clients have been to meet with them to find out, tell us what's really going on. You can be honest with us. Some just general advice there, Ian, but I think, my advice is do a lot of research yourself, set a couple of hours aside for that, then go and see your ITA and the UK-ASEAN Business Council, and they'll advise you what to do next.
Thank you so much, Richard. Very clear advice there. So I have got a couple of questions now. One of them refers directly to Thailand, but I'm going to bring in David as well, because there's a role there for the Chamber. But the question is from Mandy Lowe, who has a question that says, I understand if we need to export to Thailand, we will need to have an import license. How do we actually go about doing that? And can we get engaged with a licensed importer in Thailand to do so? Any source or information from you appreciated. So I think there's a bit of a pivot there between both the role of you, Richard, as wearing your DIT hat, and David, and a broader role as talking about the role of chambers. But in a direct response to that question, please.
Yes, so theoretically you can get your license yourself, but most of the information is in Thai, and the English language website is pretty incomprehensible. So if the organisers of this conference can let me have your email address, we'll contact you tomorrow or later today just to give you some advice about how you can get your license.
Okay, thank you. David, can you hear me? Not sure David can, but I would concur with everything you said there. And I think you would agree, Richard, that there's not a competition between DIT or the ITAs or indeed the chambers in market. The single goal is to provide the right advice at the right time in the right manner to anyone that's looking to export or set up business in the region.
That's right.
Yeah. So a couple of questions. What's great about this is that we're a bit like a message board. There are a couple of people who have asked specific questions or have floated what they do and can they be introduced to some others? So we've got some real-time relationship building going on offline, which is wonderful to see. Alex, I'm going to bring you in at this moment. It's in terms of really location. You know, you settled in Vietnam, but what was the driver for you in terms of when you set your first business up? Why did Vietnam stand out? Alex, can you hear?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, Alex. Yeah, did you hear my question?
Yes, I did. So I think principally we were looking for something a little bit different, and Vietnam was really kind of opening up. So when it had the WTO ascension, it kind of exploded, and at that time, you know, the salaries were quite competitive, and as a large manufacturer, labour, of course, is an important factor. But it's not just salaries. Vietnam also had a lot of skill. The people were very eager to learn, and it basically straddles the whole of ASEAN. So it's over 3,000 kilometers long. You've got 100 million people who are, you know, expanding. GDP is expanding about 6 or 7% a year. It's the only country, bar Singapore, that has an FTA with the EU. And this was already being discussed back in 2010, 2011. So we knew it was coming at some stage. So there were so many, I would say, positives to coming to Vietnam. It was a no-brainer for us, really. So these were the driving forces for us.
Thank you, Alex. And clearly that's paid dividends due to the success you've had with both of your companies there. I've got a question from relating, actually, it's Vietnam links. Emily won't be on right now just simply because of the loading on the platform. But I will pass this to you, Alex, wearing your vice chair's hat of the Vietnam Chamber. But I have a question from somebody who's looking at bringing their EdTech company to Vietnam early next year, but they understand that a business visa will be required. Basically, how do they go about it? Do they need a sponsor? And well, I sort of know the answer, but presumably Brit Chan would be very happy to talk direct to this individual who can give them some more background.
Absolutely. About a quarter of our inquiries are actually education based, and Brit Chan has a very large group of members that are focused on education. And licenses are bureaucratic. They take time. There are hoops to jump through, but generally there's no major issue. And especially if they're bringing technological kind of education, this is often a step forward. So I don't think the person in question will be able to come to Vietnam anytime soon, unfortunately, because of the COVID restrictions. But hopefully, business visas will be available towards the middle or the back end of next year. Once we have clarity on the vaccines, etc.
That's good. No, I do agree with that. I think it's about perspective there. Nobody knows when Vietnam will open their international borders, but there's an awful lot of work that those interested in either setting up or exporting can do in advance with you, Alex, and your colleagues. So we'll make sure that we connect you. Phil, could I bring you in, please? Basically, I suppose it's the same sort of question I asked Alex on the FMCG side. What was your prime motivation for, your own export destination there? What were the triggers for you, Phil?
Well, I joined the company 5 years ago and managed Middle East sales, and we had a relatively small amount of business in ASEAN at that point, and it was just really identifying the potential size of the opportunity. It's been covered a couple of times, the size of the population in the region, the demographics, young-ish, upwardly mobile-ish, some more sort of, depending on where you are in the region, in terms of disposable income, awareness of UK brands and products, the growing potential of people seeing your products online, the global village, the relative ease of doing business within the region. Again, I think Rizala had a slide showing you the rankings of the markets within the region and where they sit on the scale of ease of doing business. And all of that, Ian, sort of came together and made sense to suggest that, yes, we're doing some great business in the Middle East, but hey, ASEAN, Southeast Asia as a whole, there was some strong potential for the brands that we represent then and we currently represent now and in the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes a lot of...
So really it was, and following the lead from the information we were being... Sorry. Okay.
That's absolutely fine. So I'm going to bring Charlie in now. So we heard there.
Some markets are more accessible than others, obviously.
Yes, no, exactly. Thank you very much. Would the same drivers have worked for you, Charlie, on that broad tech space? Were there standout choices, or were there some question marks? And what got you over the question marks to become the standout choice?
Look, the thing for us is almost listening to Alex, Richard, and Phil. I have a very different set of challenges. I'm not manufacturing, being a cloud-based solution, I could be anywhere. So I'm driven really by customer demand, and establishing ourselves in Asia became a requirement for the globalization, as I said earlier. Establishing ourselves initially in Hong Kong became a requirement for one of our prospective customers. And it was that awkward question that many of us may have been asked before, which is, we'd like to meet your Asia team as part of the RFP, as you bite the back of your hand and suggest a Zoom call rather than in person. So 24 hours later, I'm in Hong Kong. And look, what a great opportunity in Hong Kong, not of course part of the ASEAN region, and actually with very real challenges that stem beyond COVID. Soon after landing there and recruiting our first feet on the ground, leveraging connectivity and building partnerships, Singapore and the ASEAN region is very much our focus. So whilst our hub currently is in Hong Kong, the regional, I think it was David who said that Singapore is now a real focus for not just regional but HQs, and the opportunity for us is incredibly exciting. And for those multinational companies, it's an essential ingredient to the service we provide.
That's thank you very much indeed, Phil. I'm going to go back to you. I have a question. So I've got a question here from somebody who are a luxury tea company supplying Michelin-starred restaurants to luxury hotels. Roughly, do you have any ideas what spending on luxury tea is like in the region?
That's a very specific question, and I'll be very happy to take that on board from the relevant person offline. We have some premium brands within our portfolio, which sit very nicely within a lot of a nice selection of retailers within the region. Village Grocer, etc., part of the BIG group is one that immediately springs to mind. So depending on your brand positioning, price point, etc., then yes, I suspect there will be a spot in the market for you somewhere in the region. Absolutely, yeah. You'll need a little bit of work and a little bit of teasing out, I think, as Richard and Alexander would agree to. But yeah, and obviously without seeing the brand straight off, but I would suspect yes, there would be some opportunity there, definitely.
Ian, could I just come in on that point?
Yes, please.
We're happy to talk offline with them directly.
Yeah, that's great.
Ian, I just want to say, you know, we're actually working with a company in this space at the moment. If you are already selling in UK supermarkets, rather than just being an online business, that's really, really helpful. So, for example, we have very recently supported a retailer here, a food retailer here, who wanted 100 product lines from a specific UK supermarket. And out of those 100 products, 2 of them were tea. So if you're already with a retailer in the UK, certainly from a Thailand perspective, but I suspect in other countries as well, that's a really good route to market. And I'll be happy to kind of pick up any issues or any leads that you want me to follow up.
Thank you, Richard. I'm going to stay with you right now because it's a broader question about DIT's role in terms of the defence market in ASEAN. If somebody is interested in this, should the interaction be directly with the various defence attaches, or would you see a role for yourself there, or in partnership, or is it another route?
Well, we work very closely together. You know, pretty much every market in Southeast Asia or every embassy or high commission in Southeast Asia has a defence attaché. Most of the inquiries come through to us first off as business inquiries, and we really bring in the wider team to help support companies in that sector. As you know, there are really potentially difficult issues when it comes to exporting arms and getting the relevant export licenses for the munitions or equipment that needs to be exported overseas. Again, we know that system very, very well. It's actually managed by a DIT team who are actually based in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. But we can help you navigate that. We can give you the introductions to the senior people in the military. That is often best done by the defence attaché because he or she will hold that relationship. And then we essentially act as a coordinating function between various departments and the defence attaché to make sure that our customers are getting what they need.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, I agree. I think so. The actual summary there, very much talk to Richard or any of his colleagues in the region. All of them will be able to link you in with the defence attachés who have their own specific and very valuable relationships with their opposite numbers in whether it's an embassy, high commission or consulate. But DIT, I would say, for the initial contact. Charlie, I'm going to bring you in again now, please. Specific question, very interesting one. I've got somebody here who's very curious about the business culture for leadership development in the tech sector within ASEAN. How does it feel? What do you believe that specific business culture is like in terms of leadership in your sector?
Well, I think from a cultural perspective, and I'll look at it from a kind of customer perspective. It's very different operating in the ASEAN area than it is across Europe and the States. And I think there's a lot of research you can do on the internet before arriving in the region. But I think more importantly, it's to engage in those partners, those early partners. And from my perspective, I found it really interesting. And anyone who's after their first customer in a new market, whether it's ASEAN or anywhere else globally, that first customer is the most important. I did that 5 years ago in Europe. I did it 3.5 years ago in the States, and more recently in Asia. And that first customer is going to give you more than just revenue. And they're going to help you navigate the next sort of iteration of your value proposition, or the next iteration of your narrative. And it's so important to learn. And the cultural sort of challenges that are presented in the ASEAN region are very real. And it's important that you adhere and learn from them quite quickly. I'm not sure if that's answering the leadership development as such, but certainly that's my experiences from the cultural perspective. That first customer, I can't stress, is so important. And that is not just from the revenue, which you can all take back to base. It's actually from being able to utilize them and leverage from that position.
Yes, that does. It answers it very, very, very clearly, Charlie. Thank you so much. Alex, can I've got a more generic question here, really. So, Alex, to you, especially somebody that has built those businesses, are there any specific issues related to hiring of staff, contract law in relation to people, minimum wage, minimum age considerations? Can I pass that one to you, please?
Yeah, I think to start off with, we need to realise that it's not like the UK where you've got quite loose labour laws in comparison. It is very, very bureaucratic. It's quite easy to hire, but very difficult to fire. You have to have a long paper trail. You don't have labour courts here. In Vietnam, you have a socialist system that really supports the employee over the employer. So these are all factors you need to really bear in mind. Now, you mentioned the minimum wage, and this is a topic where when you see slides about different countries in ASEAN, you see Vietnam near the bottom, and what an attractive place it is to come. The minimum wage is really just a basis, and you generally get what you pay for. And I would just like to really highlight to people that I would say in a manufacturer such as ourselves on the outskirts of one of the large cities in Vietnam, you need to double that minimum wage, and you can do that through different policies. Some would be efficiency bonuses, quality bonuses, attendance bonuses. You know, I mean, just paying somebody for their job, they will not necessarily. You then have to incentivize them again. So I would highlight that as well as a major factor. Do your research when it comes to what true salaries actually are, and take into account any personal income taxes you'll need to pay. Take into account any local, let's say, habits. So here in Vietnam, we have a 13-month salary, which is paid in January. Now, for some companies, that can be a very significant cash flow issue. So I think these are things that everybody needs to take into consideration. Does that help answer your question, Ian?
It does. Thank you, Alex. I'm going to keep you on there because I'm also interested because of the work you are doing in factories and elsewhere. How do you protect your IP?
Well, it's very difficult. I mean, it's funny. Just this week, I've had a few cases where people are copying the Echo shoes and they're making them to an inferior quality standard, and it's very, very difficult to control that. So basically, our IT systems, for a start, in the factory are very well managed. So nobody's allowed to have USBs or take files out of computers. Even emails, you would not really be able to email outside of the Echo, let's say, network. Furthermore, you know, when we do find things outside of the factory, we go for it. You know, we don't mess about. We get the police involved. We get lawyers involved. IPR is becoming higher and higher up the priority list for the Vietnamese government. So they do tend to act, but do not dilly-dally around. Put the investment in, because that sets the tone, and you may scare off others in the future. And that's effectively what you want to do.
Thank you. I thought that one might resonate with you. Charlie, do you want to add anything to what Richard has said there?
I think absolutely. And look, we're a cloud-based business, but we do, beyond just being a platform solution, we do have service requirements. And this is, if you consider the C-suite of a large multinational organization, they will receive a daily digest of news. You may all receive one yourselves. And that stems beyond just the platform. It actually requires eyeballs. It requires a service provision, an analyst, to ensure that, let's say it's Tim Cook of Apple in Cupertino wakes up with the 10 most pertinent stories in beautiful English. And that means we need to utilize service providers. So we have to open up our services, our solution for these analysts to actually produce that document on a daily basis. Putting in the protection to surround that is absolutely imperative. Gatekeeping certain areas of the platform. And if we understand or learn of anything that has been shared, like yourself, Alex, we have to go after it, and go after it incredibly quickly. And to date, I'm very grateful that we haven't had a challenge. Choosing partners is the most important thing. It's been my key message throughout this whole session on the panel. The partnerships are absolutely key, but trust takes time to build. So, Alex, I'm with you all the way. If you Identify an issue, go after it.
Thank you. Again, that's very, very clear advice there. And I think this is there's tremendous value in hearing from practitioners anyway, but these are some of the issues I know that would concern companies going into a region that they have no prior experience of. So to hear that whilst it is an issue, it's also resolvable, but it's about putting proper processes in place to protect yourself. So I'm very pleased to say there's been lots of connections being made in our chat box, and people are responding to each other, and quite clearly early relationships are already being established. So very pleased that all of us have been able to make that reality. Quick message here from Joanna, actually, who's saying please take a few minutes to fill in the feedback form which she has shared. But I'm going to take one or two more questions here. From Mike Salisbury, who says his company exports British-grown fresh produce. Is there know-how and assistance available from Bricham in opening phytosanitary access to ASEAN markets? For example, British strawberries to Thailand or Vietnam. So I'm going to Richard Porter. What's your answer to that?
Well, I'm very sorry. I'm going to have to partially answer that question.
Sure.
From a Thailand perspective. It's extraordinarily difficult when it comes to plant products or fruit or vegetables. There are a number of non-tariff measures and non-tariff barriers which we think are designed to keep most of these kind of products out. And I would say for Thailand, if it's not impossible, it's virtually impossible. So you might have to take the advice of Ian and his colleagues on this one. And look at whether there are other places in the region that might be more friendly.
So, Alex, would you concur?
So, well, we've just signed the EU-Vietnam FTA, and more than likely the UK-Vietnam FTA will roll over as of the 1st of January. And this is really exciting stuff because it means that we could actually take agricultural products from the UK into Vietnam. And I'm just having a look now, and I can see that that it looks like these will be within 5 years. There'll be a 0% tariff on fruit and veg, and that's a decline in tariff. So it looks like it's about 20% now today, and it may go down something like 5% per year, down to 0. So the UK, Vietnam, and UK strawberries in Vietnam could work out. It's quite interesting looking around Vietnam when it signed the TPP that included Canada and New Zealand. We started to see a lot of grapes from New Zealand and a lot of apples from Vietnam. So look into Vietnam.
Thank you very much, Alex. We've got about a minute or so before I wrap up. There's a couple of questions. One I think I can answer, and if I get it wrong, people can correct me later, but Christopher Moore has actually said, what chance of a virtual renewable energy mission? I'm pretty sure that I have seen details of such an energy mission being prepared right now, Christopher, so we'll be in touch offline on that. And then there was a specific question here from Radha, who is saying that they're an independent beauty brand for luxury beneficial beauty, natural skincare and niche perfumes. And they'd like to know what the spending is on green luxury cosmetics in the region. I'd love to put Richard Porter on the spot so that he could give you the exact spending pattern, but I don't think he will know. I certainly don't know, but it is something that we will and can respond to in slightly slower time. So I think that's probably it as far as timing is concerned. I'm really pleased that we had such a lively and interactive session with the people that really matter in all of this, which is our audience. So that's a very good connect there that we have with the audience. And what I would like to say in drawing this part of the session together, but I'm really grateful to Charlie, Phil, Alex and Richard for their very clear, honest and advice and answers to your questions and my questions too. Everyone provides value in all of this, but to hear from real practitioners who are facing some of the issues that all of you are asking questions about is really, really helpful. So I thank you for your openness in that, Charlie, Phil, Alex, and Richard. There are some questions that we haven't been able to answer. They're more generic, so I think that's a matter both for DIT colleagues, Chamber colleagues, and Newable. But for now, panel, thank you so much indeed for joining us. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Richard has lost his last bit of daylight there. Phil, I think you're probably suffering in the UK there, as Charlie is as well. So thank you very much indeed. And
Thank you. Thank you.
This to a close with some final comments from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What I would like to say, I think that's been a fantastic session. So I do thank everyone for joining, and I would specifically like to thank Newable, who, as I said at the outset, they're the partner for DIT's delivery partner for London and the South East. They have a huge job, and they're very busy, which is great because that's what we all want. We want more and more companies looking for information about markets. They want to know where they should export, why they should, can they, and who are the people that they should talk to. And Newable are absolutely your first port of call, and you should continue to use them. From a UK-ASEAN Business Council perspective, as I said earlier, we have an increasingly important role to play in the connectivity between working with our partners at Newable and our country directors across the ASEAN region, and also people like David Kelly and Alex wearing his Britcham hat in Vietnam. They are the people on the ground that can actually be that incredible link between getting questions sorted and getting business agreed. So I think it's been a very, very useful session as far as I'm concerned. It's good from my perspective that there is so much interest in this region. I hope that we've been able to answer your immediate queries and concerns, but this is the start of a conversation. This is an ongoing conversation, and we want to be able to give you honest advice. We want to be able to give you quick advice. Go to Newable for that. And I think my final point will be that sometimes, I think Richard alluded to this, sometimes the best advice can be that we're not the right region for you at this particular time, but it doesn't mean to say that we're the wrong region going forward. It's about timing. It's about timing your interaction with the colleagues you've met this morning. It's about understanding when to pitch, and then you will be tapping into probably the most dynamic region globally. We won't go through all the stats again, but that's why we wanted to bring in people like Emily, who's actually at the coalface there as far as the consulate is concerned in Vietnam, David Kelly wearing his Britcham hat, and then our real practitioners who are actually doing business and doing it successfully. So I'm going to draw it to a close now. We'll get back to any questions we weren't able to answer. Fill in the questionnaire that's been shared with you. But for now, thank you so much for joining, and I hope to get to talk to you again. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.